Okay, got it posted there. I got it posted there. Okay, so saved. So it's on there. Okay. All right, I think I'm gonna be ready here. Okay, so far everything looks good. If anybody happens to be here right now, I'm just getting things set up and I'll be ready in about 15 minutes. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's not quite 15 minutes, but I just thought I would just go ahead and we could have a little earlier chat. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask them. Feel a little bit calmer this morning. Everything's going well. I'm not all stressed out about that goofy Facebook thing. boy, so last night I went over it again and I did everything the way I was supposed to do it. I added the link, which was to this YouTube, and I don't know what happened. But yeah, so I don't know. All I know is this morning I have, and oh gosh, I'm going to interrupt myself and say, thanks to Shannon. My gosh, she really saved me yesterday. She's been such a huge help. Thank you, Shannon. She has been posting questions, helping me to post the links. And I just added the link to my watercolor learning website. And I went ahead and put all that in the description. So there is the link, and I actually even wrote out what the colors are, where you can get them. And I'm going to say this quite a few times, especially the closer we get to 9 o'clock. Please go to my website. That link is right to this particular tutorial. You will have a download for the image as a PDF and a JPEG. You will have the image reversed if you want. Somebody needed it that way for some reason. You will have access to the drawing that you can print out. And back to that image, you'll be able to put it on your computer or put it on your iPad, your phone, or print it out. I have the color wheel there that you can print out. I have an example of how your color wheel should look when you make that. I also have a little chart. I'm not a chart maker, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit coming up. These charts are different. They show all three of these colors: the Quinacridone Magenta, the Nickle AZO Yellow, and the Phthalo Blue. And they show the actual tubes, what they look like, and then I have painted a sample to show you how different each company, each brand makes their mixture, taking those pigments and then of course adding everything that they add to make their paint formulations. So you're going to see all that. I really, really suggest that you download those charts, those three images, and they will really help explain the three colors that we're using. I have links on the PDF files to everything that you need, links to Dick Blick that go right to the scrubber brushes, and hopefully you'll see that a little bit better in the description. So, and I'm going to mention all this again, but that way we don't have to keep going over every time somebody asks what color it is. So that's going to be all in those links. And I actually double checked them again this morning just to make sure that they were there, and they all seem to be working just fine. Some people have had issues with downloading things, and I talked to the Thinkific admins, and they said sometimes it depends on your settings, what browser you're using, what country you may be in. So keep in mind that you may have to double click on that image and then pull it over to your desktop, or sometimes that just happens. I don't have a whole lot of control over that. But as I get better at teaching these live streams, I'm hoping to be using these free live streams as an opportunity to make them better and better. This kind of helps just figure out where the problems are and how I can be better prepared to address all these issues. So all that is up in the description on this YouTube. So just hit that link and it will take you right to this Dogwood blossom and everything you'll need to get started. And again, you'll be able to rewatch this. I'm not going to ever take it down. Obviously, it's free for me to have a YouTube channel, so it'll always be up and you can stop and rewatch it, or just have a nice Sunday morning, get yourself a cup of coffee, and just watch for a while. So there you go, and I'll talk about that again. And it's about 8:45 my time. I'm going to mention this again. We are Arizona time. We are Mountain Standard Time. We're pretty much the same time right now as California, the West Coast. So the reason is because we do not follow daylight savings. So because Arizona doesn't follow daylight savings time, and we are under Mountain Standard Time, it means that we are actually the same as Pacific time, the West Coast. It's crazy. It's Arizona. I like that in some ways because we don't have to worry about going back and forth with time. So we're Arizona time, and that's why I like to add that in there. So yeah, just I'll mention this a few more times as we get closer to 9 o'clock. And good morning, Shannon from Colorado. Hi. Good morning. I feel a lot calmer today. I've had my coffee. I've got some water so that my mouth doesn't get dry as I'm talking. And I just feel really calm this morning. We're going to have a lot of fun getting those darker colors in, and I'll switch so we can see the image. And now that I got past all that Facebook stuff, my gosh, I think it's going to be a nice morning to be painting. And please, we've got about 50 minutes or so. Ask any questions. If you were struggling yesterday, I know that one person had mentioned that she was using 140-pound paper. She hadn't had it stretched, and she had a ton of buckling, so she was going to redraw it. And I'm going to keep harping on the 300-pound paper. When you are doing backgrounds, and I also posted a link to my gallery so you can see all my paintings, to really get that out-of-depth background, I could not do that on 140-pound paper. And I am no way saying that you have to have 300-pound paper, but it is a game changer, even if you're not doing a lot of background detail. It just makes painting so much easier. The colors and the water sink down into the paper. They spread better. They just look better. Your colors look more saturated. Now, there are artists out there, they, do streams, or not streams, but they have tutorials, and they seem to be fine with the 140-pound paper. I just think it's going to go better, and you are going to have a much easier time just using 300-pound paper, and you're going to have less waste. So just wanted to mention that again if you are just joining today and you weren't able to join tomorrow. So fire off questions if you want. And let's see. Shannon, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If so, it's a beautiful name. I notice you just said I will be watching again and rewatch until I understand. And I read something somewhere once that you need to hear something 3-4 times, and you need to reread it a good 3 or 4 times before you start remembering things and they sink in. So if it feels like I re-mention things, it's because I've watched or have been in classes where I've been listening, thinking I'm paying attention, might be taking a note here or there, but I forget those things. And so I think it's really important for me to keep mentioning them over and over again. And Bunny, good morning. Hello from Canada. Good morning. I'm so glad I start this a little bit early too, so that we can just chat a little bit, and I can just, as I think of things, so no, okay, yeah, and just then I can just, as I think of things, I can talk about them a little bit. And Teresa just got here from SoCal. I had no notice on Facebook, so I went straight to YT. Yeah, I actually made a new post. I posted it on my business page, my Watercolors That Glow business page, and then I check marked so that it posted also right to my my Watercolors That Glow group. So yeah, I'm not sure why it didn't show on here, but it's also, that link is on. I don't even know why I need to tell you this, because if you're here and you're seeing this. That link is on if you want to tell anybody. The link is in the description to this blossom, which goes over everything you need. Okay, Teresa, do you use the rough 300 pound or just the regular surface? So they have cold press, hot press, and rough press. I have tried hot press. It's way too smooth for me. I just don't feel like I have a lot of control. So I think the most common surface that people use is cold press. It's right in between the hot press and the rough press. I think rough press is really good if you're doing landscapes or things that have a lot of texture. I kind of struggle with that too. So yeah, I just use the cold press. And Teresa, oh, I'm not in the group. Okay, so thank you for that. That's something I should have posted in the description, is the link to my Watercolors That Glow private group. Then I would have been able to add you. So that's something I'll do at the very end of this, and then people can go right there and they'll be able to see those links. So thanks for that. That's one more thing I have to do. And it's, it's all a learning process. I mean, live stream, even as far as 3 years ago, wasn't as common as it is now. So I think it's just something new that we're all having to learn, and I'm going to get better at it as time goes on. So let me say again, anybody else, let's see how many people have really joined now. So we've got 22 people on right now. So hopefully you saw again, I tried to make everything clear in this description before I went ahead and opened up the live stream, that please click on that link. It's going to take you right to my learning platform, which I use Thinkific. And that link, it will go right to this Dogwood blossom. And when you look under the downloads, I have it huge in caps, downloads. Click on that chapter, and it's going to have a list of everything. It's going to have the drawing, the image. The image is in a couple different formats, JPEG, PDF. I have the drawing on there. I have the supply lists. Those supply lists have links to the brushes, the paints. I also have charts showing the 3 colors that we use and all the brands that I know and have found. And a couple people have mentioned that Daniel Smith actually carries like the Quinacridone Magenta. I'm just throwing that in there. But I have a chart, and it shows not only what the tubes look like, what each brand, their particular PY150 PB15 or the PR122, then that would be the Nickle AZO yellow, the Phthalo Blue, and the Quinacridone Magenta. So it shows the different companies, how the colors look, and how I kind of rated them. So I really, really, really want you to take advantage of that. Download those and really look at them. And that will, hopefully that will kind of help you to know that mine aren't the only brands, the ones that I use. So there you go. Let's see. Shannon, is your Arches 300 grams, 140 pounds? I don't go by those grams. I just go by 300 pound. So what that usually means is, so 140 pound, 300 pound, 90 pound. The way the watercolor paper companies, how they come up with that is they take a palette, like 1 foot high by whatever the paper is, and they weigh it, and that's how they call it, 300 pound or 140 pound. So it's 300 pound. So, and I know different countries, I think, don't go by the pound anymore. It's by the GM. And I should know this. I should know what the 300 pound paper is in that metric. Sorry, I don't know that. I would have to go look that up, and I will try to be more aware of that. So yes, it's 300 pound. I don't know how that relates in grams. You're gonna have to look that up. I'm really sorry. Hopefully somebody has that answer and they can post it in the little comments. So again, I want to mention that I'm so sorry for that confusion. I was not as prepared as I was when I did the teacup stream. Feel a lot more prepared this morning. My cameras are set up better. I also have a smaller palette, and because I put aside my bigger palette. Since I'm not doing the background this morning, and we're just doing those background branches and stems. So you can see my palette a little bit better. You'll be able to see my image a little bit better. So, oh, yay, Julie. 300 pound is 640 GM. Thank you. Thank you for finding that. Just goes to show, just because you're teaching doesn't mean you know everything. And I certainly wouldn't want to ever feel like I know everything. I like to get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to learn something new. And I think that just helps keep you a little bit more grounded and down to earth. So there we go. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is give everybody a few more, seeing about 27 people are here. So I want to give everybody a few more minutes to show up, and I'm going to face down so that everybody can see the painting now that it's really dried and super flat, and talk a little bit more about that background and how it's looking. So, okay, here we go. All right. So you can see that I've raised my camera a little bit, so we can see this a little bit better. My paint, I have the smaller palette. I have put my other palette to the side. I didn't want to get rid of any of that color, so I've put that aside in case I need that, because that's all of these background colors. So this way you can see my palette a little bit better, and I'm going to turn it around, put that yellow at the top. And while we're giving people just a few more minutes to show up, hopefully yesterday, if you were here, you saw how I went over using a round plate so that it is set up like a color wheel. And we had painted this color wheel yesterday. My bad. I wish I would have had that prepared. I have a cutout, and then that's what I want you to be able to download. So you can do this every time before you start a painting. So I have a nice clean palette. My colors are all clean. I know that we're going to be working with these colors today, and that's why I wanted to set the bigger palette aside, because I may be coming back to those colors if I need to clean up, or add some of the background. And I really want to say that If I were painting for myself, I would be doing a lot more on this background, even deeper colors in some areas, or you know, who knows, maybe even adding some red and making it look like there's like a really out of focus flower in an area. But you know, we only have so much time. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be working on these back petals. I'm sorry, this back petal, this, and all of these dark colors. And if we have time today, go over and start on the flower, the foreground flower. And that's why it's probably likely I'm going to do a part 3, and maybe next weekend, or you all let me know as we're getting to the end of this, what day is going to, you know, what's going to be the best day. I know everybody's going to have their own days, but, you know, hopefully we can kind of try to get close to what would be suitable for everybody. So again, I'm happy with this background as it looks right now. And what I wanted to say about all that, getting around that the long way, is that as you paint, you're always going to need to make adjustments, especially when it comes to value. You may think that this looks really good, and I think it does look really good. It's light, it's dull. The background is not a very vibrant background, which is really going to help those beautiful magenta pink flowers stand out. But I may have to adjust as I'm going along. And as we get closer to getting this finished, we're going to see that. And the whole time I'm painting, you're going to always hear me, just like yesterday, how I didn't like that area, and I just kept working it till it got to how I wanted it. I may change strategies. I may say, you know, I don't like putting the water down first, so I may have to change things as I'm going along. And that is why it's really important to think outside of the box while you're painting. And I get this question a lot. Well, what technique do you use? Well, I use everything. I may use wet on wet. I may use wet on dry. As my backgrounds start building in layers, my paint gets thicker, it gets drier, I may not wet as much, or I may think, you know, I need to wet it again and let all these colors blend out, because that color starts building up on the surface as you get more layers put down. So just be aware of that as I'm painting, things change. So there we go. Okay, and Shannon. Oh, let's see. The background is gorgeous. Thank you. I think it's looking good. If you were watching it yesterday, you saw me scrub out those spots, and it just is glowing. It's a little dull, but it just, I feel that glow coming through from like a background sun. And just wait until we get these darker colors in. You are really going to see a difference. And that is why I'm going to say this again. Do not tape your painting down with colored tape. It's going to affect how you see your colors. So let's see. So thank you for that. Yes, I think the background is looking good. And Shannon says, be aware that Daniel Smith also has an opera pink that is labeled PR122. It is fugitive, so you don't want to use that. Please look at the details on the tubes and check Debbie's chart. Shannon is so correct. And yes, she discovered that companies are using PR122 with a fugitive component that they aren't listing, which is called rhodamine B violet, or rhodamine red B. That is a dye. So ignore opera. Please don't use opera. It is made with the color that I use, which is the magenta, the Quinacridone magenta, PR122, and that fugitive dye. Yes, there are artists out there right now, and they do tutorials, and they use that color, but I don't get the point of it. That dye is it's going to completely disappear, and in the end, all it's going to leave you with is the magenta. Why bother? And it just... I really rail about this. I think and this is one of the reasons why watercolor paintings the value is never the same as acrylics and especially oil is because too many companies, brands sell these fugitive colors. It just, an artist shouldn't be using them. If we're going to be teaching you, we really, really shouldn't be using those colors. So I just like to spread the word, and yeah, please don't use those. So, okay, there are some people that are coming in. Bangalore, India. Oh, I love the background. Thank you. And Barbara from Namibia. Bit late. It's okay. I was just chatting. You'll be able to go back later and just rewatch the first part. So again, I have my smaller palette here. My colors were, as of a little bit ago, pretty wet. I must admit, I grabbed one of my other palettes and my colors had dried, so I just soaked them this morning. And because we're not doing that background, I'm not too worried at this point that the colors are a little bit drier. Okay, so I am going to start right down here. I want to get those beautiful darker colors in. So I'm going to pull over. Oops. Hang on, give me a sec here. I pulled up the wrong image. I pulled up the image that was reversed. I reversed it for somebody, so let's see, here we go. Let me get that correct image up. Okay. And I really, really want to say this again. I know I have the image up here in the corner. That's just for you to reference, but hopefully you have printed this out in a good size, or you're looking at it on an iPad or a nice large size, and you're not going by this image up here in the corner. I just have it there for reference for when I am looking at my image on the computer screen, because it's actually up large and it kind of overshadows my filming. I have to keep my filming image up so that I make sure that you guys can see what I'm seeing. Okay, so I have it I have it correct now. So, and we are going to be mixing these colors right here, just like we did yesterday. All right, so I think I'm gonna start right under here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to bother to wet the paper. They're smaller areas. I'm going to start with a number 4 brush, and I just have some nice watery yellow. This is going to kind of be an undercoat, and honestly, this is usually how I start a painting. I start with a little bit of yellow, and I kind of build some value with the yellow. And one of the reasons why I'm not bothering to wet the paper is because this yellow is just helping to get that nice, it's almost like a very unsaturated orangey red. So I want to make sure I get plenty of yellow in there. So again, I'm changing tactics. I'm not wetting it. And this means this is going to go a little bit faster. I'm just making sure I use lots of water and my yellow is nice and watery. And I'm crossing over on this flower because I see yellow everywhere in this whole area. Right there, it's a little bluer and a little cooler. So I'm going to kind of skip that area. If you see what I did, I just wet my brush, started it here, and pulled it towards this area instead of taking my brush and swiping over there. That way it kind of pushes it away from that area a little bit. But honestly, it's you're not really going to see it. If you do get a little bit of yellow in there, just take your paper towel and just kind of dab it a little bit. Because even if you end up having a really harsh line from that yellow, it's not going to matter much because we're going to be covering that with those darker colors. I just like to get a nice base yellow under there. And again, I usually do that on pretty much everything. I just feel like when you don't have that yellow down, things look a little raw. And if you're looking at this area, you can see that there's a lot of yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. I'm seeing yellow everywhere in the leaves, in those beautiful orangey dark reds. So I'm just going to kind of put yellow everywhere. I'm going to vary it. I'm not too concerned about how much yellow is where because there's a lot of yellow there. Let's see. Let's get up in here. Oh, and now that I'm really checking this out carefully, obviously you can see there's some background areas up in this little leaf area. That's okay. Obviously, there's yellow. There's yellow everywhere in here, so just kind of varying it, adding water. What I don't want is a completely solid yellow. I want to make sure those colors are all varied. I'm sorry, I want to make sure that that yellow is really varied. And you can see I'm looking over at underneath this petal right here, and boy, is that a gorgeous, gorgeous dark, almost like a burnt sienna. And that's why when I was making that color wheel yesterday, and I'm going to bring it back over here for a sec, you notice I didn't talk a lot about burnt sienna, black, browns, because I want you to learn just to think about what you're seeing. It doesn't matter what those colors are called. It's better if you're just thinking in, wow, is that kind of an orangey yellow? Is that a dull yellow? What is that? I think when you think too hard about what that color is called, you're not focusing on just taking those three colors and trying to get as close as you can to what you're seeing. So, and here it is again. So yesterday, when we were mixing these colors, I had made this dark, beautiful color right here. And you notice I didn't call it, let's see, warm brown or mummy brown or all those Van Dyke brown or black, Mars black or ivory black or burnt sienna. It's just a dark valued red. And that's how you learn to start making your own colors. After that, once you learn the basics, if you want to add a burnt sienna, add a burnt sienna. I think it's important to say again that I'm not trying to say you can't use all these other gorgeous colors, but when you're using too many colors and you haven't learned first how to get all those colors mixed, you really won't understand why you're using that tube of burnt sienna. So this is really important. And yes, I will say I have used burnt sienna, but it was when I was first starting to paint. I honestly find that I mix with my palette a much more beautiful burnt sienna. And of course, those beautiful, I'm going to use this word, blacks and browns, I usually like to call those just dark values. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. And you can see how right along this area, I definitely kept it out of there. So now what I'm going to do, as I'm looking at these, at this petal right here, I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow there because boy, that color is going to be really dark. So this is just kind of helping me, again, get a head start. And the same thing here. And can you see how, hopefully, let me look at what I'm seeing on the screen here. And yeah, I can already see that I've almost kind of built a little bit of a value structure with that yellow. Okay. Just getting this a little bit darker up there. And again, I don't want to have to be turning this too much because we're streaming this, but normally I would be turning constantly so I can keep my brush to the inside of the line I'm painting so I get nice sharp edges. It's very hard to try to clean up an edge. It's much easier to get a nice edge while you're painting than have to go fix it later. And there's a big difference between a really ragged edge if you're just not paying attention to how you're painting. So there's a big difference between a ragged edge and softening a nice sharp line. And we're gonna really see that as we go up into these other areas. Okay, and again, if your lines are really dark, take your kneaded eraser and roll it, and then just kind of roll it over your lines, and that will help lighten them a little bit. I am trying to keep my lines darker so that you can see, because obviously we're filming and it does look a little bit different. So my lines would definitely be a lot lighter. Get a little bit more yellow in that area right there. And now I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look at that background petal right there. And remember, yesterday I decided to make it easier to do that separately, to do this background area and that background a little bit separately. And yes, this is part of the background. And we want to make this petal look all nice and faded and airbrushed so that it stands out against this petal. But I chose to wait and not do it at the same time because it's even a little bit difficult for me to do that. So we will end up softening those edges and we will make some nice soft blends in there. But what I'm looking at right now is where I'm seeing yellow. So I'm going to take my bigger brush on this particular petal back there. I'm going to make sure I got a nice clean brush. And please be aware, when you use transparent staining colors, sometimes they can really sink deep into your brush, especially around the ferrule, because the pigment particle size is very small. So I've surprised myself by not cleaning my brushes good enough, being really lazy about that. And yes, this time on this area, I am wetting the whole area. I'm not going to bother to let it sink in. I don't really care about that. I just don't want my yellow that I can see all in this area to get anywhere near this area, because that's a nice, cool, beautiful, beautiful, cool, almost like a very light magenta that tends toward the blue side. So I don't want any harsh edges on here because this is really, really part of the background. Even though technically this area over here is too, it's very dark, so we're not going to see edges there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my smaller brush again and pick up just a little bit of yellow. And I'm really seeing it down in this area. So I'm just letting it flow into that watered area. Or the area where I added some water. And I'm not seeing a lot down here. I'm seeing a cool red, just like up there. So I just want to keep that yellow right in that area. And this is what's nice about painting with this limited palette is instead of thinking about that color, you're thinking about all those other important things like, is this warm? Is this cool? Where should I put some yellow? Where should I put some blue? And I kind of see a little bit right there. And a little bit right up along that edge. Okay, so I'm going to leave that alone. And now I'm going to address this little petal right here. The one where I wasn't, the one, if you remember yesterday, I just whoop, put water right over that. Okay, so now I'll be able to show you what's going to happen when I put some of that magenta over there. So I'm not too worried about getting a little bit of that background in there. In fact, that I think is going to be a good place to start now that so that I don't have to stop and dry this with a hairdryer. We can go ahead and wait, and I'll work over here on that background petal. And again, it's going to be the same thing as this background petal. So let's see, I'll let that sink in a little bit more, and let's see, I'm going to answer some questions here. Julie says, are people hearing double talk? I don't think anybody else is. You may have, yeah, you may have two devices playing or two pages, but maybe turn one off. Let's see. What about using yellow ochre? Yellow ochre is an extremely opaque color. If you try to mix it with transparents, or you mix too many colors on your palette together, boy, it's going to muddy up. And oops, and I might mention, that was a good question. There's a big difference between muddy colors and dull colors. A dull color has to do with saturation. So like blue jeans, that's kind of a dull blue, and that is a very saturated blue. So there you go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, add some of that red over there, and I'm going to add a little bit more yellow, because now I'm really seeing that it's actually has a little bit of yellow in it. Okay. Now lots of water. And you can see maybe that color maybe dulled it down a little bit, but you know, I don't think it's not enough that I would throw my painting away over. But it did affect it a little bit. Let's move this over here. There we go. I'm just kind of moving my brush around. I'm going to go with a smaller brush and grab some thicker color. Get off that bubble of color. Even thicker. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone for now. And you're probably going to notice, or I hope you can see this, that I went outside of the edge a little bit. I'm not too worried about that, because as soon as that dries, I'm going to soften a lot of these areas and make sure that that blends in with the background. So we have a nice soft blend. And you can already see, just want to look quickly. There we go. Hold it up so that the light from the water isn't, there we go. Okay, just you could see a reflection from the light. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit. Of water down at that bottom. Kind of push, what I'm doing is trying to push that color away from that center there, so it, here, now let me tip it again. In fact, I'll hold it that way so you can see. So just dropped some water there and let it push away and push that color up to the edge so we have a nice little flat area in there. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow. And there, that adds just a little bit of a glow in it. Let me move it around. There, now you can really see that. So once we soften that edge, and this is definitely going to lighten up a lot, so we'll start seeing that as it dries, and then as we soften that edge. Oh, and I forgot about that little guy right there. Okay. All right, let's get that into, and we're still waiting for that yellow to dry over there. Okay, so same thing. And obviously I didn't soften those lines, but that'll help you to see that better. Okay. Grab a little bit of that yellow, and I see yellow right in this area. Ooh, that's going to be a fun area right there. That's really going to make this petal stand out. That beautiful shot of almost like an orange with a lot of yellow in it. That's really gonna just make that pop. Okay, so let's leave that alone, and I'm gonna have to dry this. Whoops. Well, that was dumb. All right. It's laying flat and it's pretty dry. And that's also another way to tell, especially when you tape your paper down. Once it flattens out completely and you don't feel any ridges, it usually means it's completely dry. So I feel confident on that. Okay, I'm so excited. This is my favorite part of painting because now you really see things start to come together. Like I'm looking over there, and that needs to have some yellow in it. It's a little bit too blue. So I don't think I put enough yellow in some of those areas. So I'm gonna have to get some more yellow in there. But right now I'm gonna come over here and I'm trying to figure out what brush I'm gonna use. And I think I'm gonna use my number 4. Okay, I just wanted to get that my color a little bit wetter. And I'm gonna wet this again. It's the background, it's background petal. I don't want to have any edges. And again, if I were painting this, I would be sitting there and just turning it constantly, but that's a little bit more difficult when I'm filming and then having to look off the screen to make sure that you can still see where I'm painting. In fact, if anybody did the teacup, I've been waiting and waiting for more to show up, for anybody to finish, because I'm really excited to see all of them and see how everybody did. Let's see. I'm going to go to a smaller brush now. I'm going to go to a number 2. And I'm kind of thickening that paint a little bit, but not a whole lot. Hopefully you can see that. It's still watery, but it just has a little bit more color in it. See how I got right up next to that edge? I want plenty of color on there because I'm going to have to be blending that out. And you know what? There's definitely more yellow than I thought. And I'm just blending out with my brush and some water. If you're painting right now, I know some of you, it's easier to watch it first, and you get this first layer on and you're thinking, it looks all wrong. Don't stress. Sometimes it takes a few layers to soften things out. I don't just usually stick with 1 or 2 layers. Sometimes it takes me going over it. For instance, I'm already kind of trying to figure out what am I going to do with this petal. That's why I chose to wet it. I want to make sure that there's some nice soft blends going on. And then when I feel I have enough blends and that it all looks really good, I am going to switch to making sure the paper's dry and then using a very, wet brush. So wet on dry. And probably, because it is part of the background, I'll even scrub some areas out because I know I'm going to lose that highlight right there and then all along this side. And I want that nice, beautiful highlight there. So I'm going to lose some of that. So don't worry if you're painting along and you feel like everything just spread out and you can't really see anything. Don't stress over that. Watercolor, unless you do just landscape type of art painting, and you just quickly put the color down. Sometimes you have to be a little bit patient with watercolor. It takes time to build up those layers and that glow, but that's what makes it look so amazing and beautiful, is just that gorgeous glow that you get. Which to me, and I love oil, but I just don't think you get that same gorgeous glow. did you see that I picked up some really thick paint? Because I kind of want it to stay right in that area. So again, it's kind of all about how much water's on your paper and how thick is your paint. Okay, so I'm going to leave that alone now and go ahead and come over here. And even though that's not dry, I'm not worried about that kind of blending into that area, because you can actually see there's a little bit of a shadow right over there. And while we're getting into these flowers, you know, you don't have to put in as much detail as I do. In fact, honestly, I'm putting in a lot less detail, if you've seen any of my paintings, than I'm going to be doing on this painting. But you know what? It's not about how much detail you have in this painting. It's all about learning to get some control over that water, learning to paint with that limited palette, learning how to get the effects you want with the limited palette, because I'll be honest, you could do what's called a split primary palette, and I'll be doing, you know, some later once I get through building up a good library of tutorials with the 3-color palette. There are limitations and how much saturation you can get with the limited colors that you're using. And so sometimes you may need to add in another color, but I think it's more important in the beginning to learn how to try to get as close as you can to those saturated colors that you're missing by using value to your advantage, by using complementary colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So there's a lot that you need to learn first before you go ahead and start. I'm going to switch to a bigger brush. Before you start trying to figure out, nope, back to a small brush, other colors. Get your foundations in first. Okay, now the bigger brush. Once this dries, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of reflection from the water. But you can see it's a soft, rosy glow now with that yellow underneath. And yes, I'm going to lose a little bit, again, of my highlights, but that's what my scrubber brush is going to be for. And look at how nicely everything's just softly blending out. And now that I kept the yellow out of these upper areas, you can see how that magenta is a soft color again. It's just, or a soft, cool color again. And down here it's warmer. And just keep in mind, this is supposed to be fun. Try not to get too frustrated. It's a learning process. If you saw the painting that I'm working on, those cherries and limes, I struggled a little bit with those stripes because they're all basically kind of, you know, it's a lot of blue stripes. And I was trying to make it so that it didn't look, I felt like as I was painting, those stripes looked very flat. So I added a little bit, just a very fine line of yellow around it because that's the complement, optical complement. I shouldn't have even said that. I don't want to confuse anybody, but it kind of added what's called halation around those lines. And we'll go over that too. And I've talked about that in some of my tutorials. It's that effect that you see when you look at, let's say, a plant or an object and the sun is behind it. And as you're looking at it, you see a glow around the edge. That's the technical term, is halation. And when you add that onto the edges of your paintings, and go look, if you get a chance, go look at some of my paintings and you're really going to see that I add that usually around all the edges of my flowers. So if I have, a lot of green, or a lot of deep areas where it's really blue in the background, then I'll add oranges and yellows just right along the edges of things, and it just makes it just glow. That's a little trick that I learned from Linda Stevens Moyer. She is an artist out of La Jolla, California, and she mentioned that in one of her books called, I think it's Painting Layer by Layer. And she's amazing to me because she does what I do. I can't quite follow her all the way, but she completely gets every bit of yellow in. Then she goes to red and only paints red. Then she goes to blue. So she paints like a printer. I tried it. It was a little difficult. I couldn't paint that way. I usually will put my yellow first, but I can't completely do what she does. But she's amazing. I don't know if she's still painting. This is quite a while ago, but her work is beautiful. And she's all about a limited palette too. Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and start. No, I'm not gonna stop. Let me go back to a big brush and kind of soften that color up right in that area. And that color will just kind of keep spreading out as it's drying. So while we're letting all that dry, let me see how it's looking. Okay, just gonna let all that dry and we're gonna come back down here on the bottom. So now what I'm gonna do is, what am I gonna do? Okay, gonna get some red, and this time I'm not gonna bother to wet it. I'm just putting it on pretty wet, and I can already see that I need more yellow. So I'm gonna grab more yellow. There we go. I go back and forth between mixing color on my palette, mixing it on the paper. That's just something that you might develop as you're painting. I kind of use all those different techniques. I don't think it's so important how you get it on there, but just the effect that you like. Now, if you saw what I did, I just grabbed some blue. I just added it down there on the very bottom of that leaf because it's reflecting, whatever's in that background is kind of reflecting that blue. I'm gonna add just a little bit more. Go easy with that phthalo blue. It's very strong, but it's such a lovely, lovely color. And it has such a wide mixing range. Now, if I were doing this area by myself, it would probably take me a good day just to get in all those little details, but I'm not going to worry about that. Just teaching you to see the difference in values and saturation. I left that area right there because I want that to be a nice cool pink again. So I'm gonna kind of avoid that. I'm gonna turn my arm. I just got some thicker color. And I'm getting more yellow. Notice how I'm going back and forth and just dropping in some yellow. That's important too, that you vary that a little bit. So you just don't have one solid color. Dipping my brush in some water, varying that color a little bit. I'm gonna add some yellow there. I'm actually going to go to a smaller brush now so I can get right up next to those edges. There we go, I lost my number 2. Ah, here's a lovely little area. Okay. Let me get that red in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop some of that blue in there. And I should have some piles mixed, and maybe that's what I'll do too, so you can see and grab from, or watch me grab from different areas. I can make a little area there of some darker colors like we mixed on that palette. I'm just picking up some of that water. I need to go with some thicker color. There we go. I love it. See how when I picked up that thicker color, it kind of stayed in that area. It's going to spread out a little bit, but I'm using very thick paint on a wet surface. And this is going to be hard for you to see, but what I normally do is the minute I touch my brush to the paper, I kind of lightly float it on the surface, and I don't just let the brush go anywhere. Because what happens the minute you lift that brush, it goes whoosh, like that. That's my sound effect for the day. It's almost like your brush is, the water tension is holding that color and moving it around the surface. So for instance, and you're going to see this when we do the lines, you don't want to paint that line and at the very end lift your brush because it's going to make a big circle. So we're going to go the opposite direction. We're going to start at the thinnest part of the line and work our way forward. So I think that that is just, my gosh, beautiful. I'm really, really happy with that. Now I'm going to pick up even more blue. And I'm going to drop it down in there. And look what happened. Look at how beautiful that is. And now it's kind of just blending out. And I didn't even have to get a tube of black or a tube of burnt sienna. And it's just beautiful. I love how that's looking. What I'm going to do is just pick up a little bit of that color right there so that it kind of defines that area a little bit. This is a damp brush. See how I just pulled in that direction and picked up some of that color. Now, as soon as it sinks in a little bit there, I'm going to do that same thing because there's a beautiful little line. And I'm not going to go in again. I'm going to try not to get too much detail because we'll be here all day. Let's see. I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue. It's almost too much. And see how I'm kind of going back and forth and adjusting with my colors? Like, that was too much. But you can really see how it just completely built that area up. I'm very happy with that. Okay. So I've got that. I'm going to let that dry. We did this over here, this petal. I think it needs more yellow. So I'm going to put some yellow in there. Much better. Needs to be a little thicker along the edge. And yes, I did it on dry paper. And a lot of yellow. I'm just wetting, I'm going back and forth, I'm picking up some color, then wetting my brush and kind of blending it out. Okay, I'm a little bit happier with that now. Now that's getting dry, so that I don't have to stop and use my blow dryer again. Let's go ahead and work under here. I actually missed some of the lines. Oh, look at this area right here. How beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's so dark. That's really going to make everything stand out. So again, I did not wet that area. Just picking up some yellow and some of that red, just kind of outlining it. Now I'm going to throw some blue on there. And some thicker magenta. Oh my gosh, that's really beautiful. Okay, I'm very, very happy with that. Go up in this little area. I did miss some lines in here. Hopefully you did better, or if you used my drawing, you definitely noticed areas that I missed. I'm just saving, I kind of just painted around that. Those are just some areas that are a little bit greener. It's from the background. Let's get a little bit more red in that area. If you're struggling to get that dark value, just make sure that your color is really thick. Isn't that amazing? If you were to do that with opaque colors, take 3 primary colors and mix them together, you would just make mud. But you can see that glow. Let's see how it is looking to you all. Just beautiful. I notice I'm looking at my screen, and of course everybody's screens are calibrated a little different, but it's there's a lot of red in there, so it's looking, I think it looks really pretty so far. I'm gonna stop for a second, just check. Just gonna give that a second to sink in. And Shannon is saying, I love that you can appreciate the beauty of your own work along the way. Sometimes I get really excited about something and then I feel funny about it. Oh my gosh, that is, that's exactly me. Sometimes I'll get so excited when I'm painting, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to calm down. I need to go outside, go sit in the garden because I get almost too excited to paint. So I'm just doing the same thing over here at just kind of mixing right in the center there. And you need a lot of that red. And again, I'm just putting the color. These areas are so small that that's why I'm not worried about adding water first. I'm just kind of at this point letting the color mix and mingle on the paper. Okay, so I put some really, really thick red up in that area. Now I'm going to add some of that blue, and you're going to really see it darken up again. And there we go. And then I'll leave that little area alone right there. I'll just let that dry, and then we can kind of blend some stuff out into those other leaves. Yeah, I definitely missed some lines. That's okay though. I'm just going to kind of improvise. Oh, did it again. Okay, and then let's get these gorgeous, beautiful branches right here. Just mixed in some yellow and red again. We're just kind of still sticking with that, and I'll just, use that, lack of a better word, that burnt sienna kind of color. I just realized that's pretty wet still, so I think that whole area. So let me just quickly dry this. Let's see. I'm just reading what the comments that Shannon's making, and I totally agree. Maybe if we all did that, affirming ourselves and just trying not to be so insecure, and I think especially when you're painting, is just give yourself a little bit of a break. I lots of times don't do that, but painting should be fun. Okay, almost there. Okay, so I'm just gonna try to quickly go along. Actually, I think we're doing pretty good. That took an hour to get all that in. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a little bit of that magenta and very watery mix. I'm gonna finish up this little area right here. Grab a little bit of yellow and a little bit of thicker magenta. Get that hair off my brush. So let me say this as you're painting, and I've already mentioned this. Things are gonna look, you know, weird around the edges, but after we fill all this in, then we're gonna go and we're gonna soften it up. So don't stress if you feel like it, you know, looks like a kindergarten cutout. Eventually we'll start softening those edges. As soon as I just want to get all the color kind of relatively filled in. Okay, now I feel like we can continue on, especially with this little grouping here. I need to come down into here. Let me get a bigger brush. So ignore what I just said, or if you want to be on that, on those, you can certainly go ahead if you feel confident. Kind of stayed away, just came in a little bit along that line. So I realized, well, duh, I just wet that area. Just added a little bit of blue there. Now I'm gonna go back to a small brush and really get that saturated color in there. There we go. I better dry that real quick so that doesn't blend out into that area. I got a little too close. Okay, good. Now I've got that pretty dry right there, so that won't bleed into that little pinkish area. All right, I'm feeling better about that area. So now let's go ahead and work on this little area right here. I'm just picking up a little bit of blue. And I'm going to go back to red. Just trying to get as much color as I can so I don't have to come back too many times. Now just adding some yellow. Let's go back over here. I'm adding yellow. And now let's grab some red. That's really starting to come together. You can see that's a green branch right there, and there's a little yellowish leaf right here. And I'm going to leave that just for a little bit. Let's add some more yellow right in there. Just trying to vary my concentrations. Just picked up a little bit of that blue. Just to get those tips. And there's definitely some areas in there, but I'm going to let it dry just a little bit. And I'm going to go back to a thicker brush. I'm going to grab some of that red, paint right over this little branch area. Smaller brush, grab some yellow. Grab a little bit of blue. See how it just darkened that right up? Just trying to get all around, get the darkest and reddish colors that we can. And then I can go back to finishing, filling in the greens. And then we can move on to softening all of these colors. So I'm just kind of varying between the yellow and the red, and just making sure we get some of those areas really dark. So see how I took my brush and pushed back up in that direction? And that still has to dry a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna let this kind of dry and let's see if there's any more questions. Bunny, how do we know when we should build layers for values and when we go dark from the beginning? That almost just kind of comes from feel and after you've painted for a while. I usually, if I were painting this on my own, I would be building this up a little bit. I would be taking more time. You wouldn't believe how long I would spend on this area. I mean, I could spend an hour easily right in there, just gently adding color, maybe grabbing my scrubber brush and lifting a little bit of color. So I get pretty detailed. So you're not gonna see me do all that. Now, if you could come to my home and just sit next to me all day, you'd be going, oh my gosh, I don't know if I have the patience, or maybe you do. So there's only so much that I can show, but I'm trying to find a happy medium between getting these beautiful soft blends and showing you how I build layers without spending 3 hours just on that one little area. So that's something that you just have to work on. Now, last night before I went to bed, and I'm just taking a little bit of a break here just for a minute because I kind of need to. So let me hold that thought. And Barbara, goodbye. You need to prepare for dinner. Bye-bye, lovies. We chat on Facebook. Absolutely. Have a nice dinner and just finish watching the rest of it at your leisure. So going back to this, it's just something that the more you paint, the more you're going to feel comfortable with learning about how dark you need to go. And I can tell you a lot. And this is why I am not one of these artists that feels like I can't divulge my secrets. What secrets? I mean, it's all just about technique. And I'll show you every little thing that I do, every little hint that I can give you to help you become a better painter. But a big part of it is just paint. Try painting every day, even if it's for a half hour. You might, getting frustrated after doing one painting or tearing it up, and it's just, you just have to keep painting, and then you'll start learning what you should do first. Do I, can I go a little bit darker on a layer? I don't always have, I don't always know. Sometimes it's just a matter of I have to kind of feel an area. So that's kind of how I do it. So you're kind of watching me as I'm going along. So now I'm going to let this area dry. I'm going to let it dry really thoroughly, and then I'll go in and I'll finish those little spots. And then softly blend it all. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and finish up here. Now I'm not going to wet that area. I am going to actually clean my red off a little bit. I'm going to make sure we don't have any yellows in there. If I have blues in there, it's okay, but at this point, I really just kind of want a clean area. I'm kind of glad I didn't go in there and mix these darker colors. And honestly, sometimes I'll paint with 2 or 3 of these palettes. Let's say I'm starting with yellow. I'll actually have a palette off to the side so that I don't contaminate my yellow with other colors, or I might just have a palette with reds and yellows. So yeah, you can do that too. These plates are not expensive. See how I went and picked up some yellow? I'm just kind of back and forth between the pink. Now I'm just lightly blending it out, always pushing towards where I want the paint to stay, out of that lighter area. Because this is kind of a shadow area. And right in here, I'm going to push it back over there. It always helps too, and I think I mentioned that earlier, vary your colors a little bit. Throw some yellow in there. Just adding getting in some of those very light lines that I'm seeing. Just kind of holding my brush along the side. Now I'm adding a little bit more yellow into that mix. Just looking at where those darker values are. I'm using a very, very light mixture. Just going to pick up a little bit more yellow. It's very watery. So you see how it's much darker down in this area. Oh, that magenta is just so beautiful. It just gives a beautiful glow, especially when you add the yellow in with it. So I'm just kind of, again, I'm just letting all those colors just kind of blend together. See how I'm building the color up just a little bit at a time. Let all that blend out. Because I want this to be soft. I don't want any harsh edges. Oh no. Yikes. I picked up a little chunk of red there. Okay, so here's how I'm going to fix that. There we go. I wasn't being very careful. I must have just hit the side of my my darker pigment color on the paper there. I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow. I really want this area to glow. And again, I'm going to take my scrubber brush and I'll soften some of those highlights in there and I'll pull them out. You know, one of the reasons why I use scrubber brushes so much is because I get stressed, I'm going back to this, when I have to try to save whites, and using masking fluid in soft areas just leaves a hard edge, and I have to kind of scrub that edge out anyhow, so why not just use a scrubber brush? And they work so well. I'm glad I discovered them, and I'm okay with using them. You know, some people obviously don't want to use them, but boy, they work so well for me. It stops me from having to stress over all these little tiny minor highlights. So as soon as this dries, I'll start working on that. Let me grab some yellow and add it right back in there. Again, just kind of going back and forth. Just nice soft blends. Yeah, because I definitely lost some of the highlights in there, especially right in there. But just a quick scrub with a scrubber brush, and you're really going to see that come forward. Okay, now I'm going to take this little guy right here. I just saw that. Drop in some yellow along with that red. And look at how beautiful it makes that green go ding. Why? Because it's the complementary color. So not only am I using complementary color, but you can see how darkening this and using that value change, some red back in there, is really going to make this petal stand out. So this petal's very light valued, that's very dark valued. So that's going to look really good. Okay, so I've got the color in there. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, I think so far things are turning out pretty good. Let me just give that a second to dry, and then I'll go over on this area. And Channeline, how long usually does it take you to finish a painting? Well, if I counted in hours, my bigger paintings, I probably could have a good 40 hours in there. Again, I would go over this over and over and over, and then start building those lines and softening edges and adding a little bit more yellow. So I would have done that a little slower if I were on my own. And I think the best way to do this is I'm going to turn this around. Okay, good. So you could see it. Let me flip my image over. Okay. And same thing. I'm just going over the paper. It's dry. And again, I'm going to be blending out with my scrubber brush. Wait till you see what happens when we scrub some of those highlights out. It's going to be beautiful. At this point, if I were just painting this for me, I would get way too excited and I would want to see it, so I would start scrubbing it out. I would dry it and then start scrubbing it out. Just have to say, calm down, Debbie. Relax, you'll get to it. Now, I want to make sure that this area stays super light. You know why? Because that petal right there is going to be dark. So again, that value change is going to really make a difference when we see how this forward petal comes through. Same there. So I'm going to want to make sure that I have that little tiny highlight. Hopefully in that image up there you can see that there's a little bit of white around that edge. So now when I go and put that saturated dark orangish red right in that area, you're going to really see it stand out because this area is all going to be light. So it's going to look amazing. It's going to look really nice when we pick out some of those highlights. And the same over on this one. Okay, so let's let those go for a while. Let's let them dry. Let's get back over into this area. Okay, we've got that one. Now let's turn it back over. Make sure I'm centered. Now you can really see. So let's stop for a minute, really look at this. You can really see that those dark areas are really making, you look over and you see that light, so you see some good darks. You're seeing some good lights, some good highlights. So that's making a huge difference. The only thing that we're going to need to do, other than finishing up some of those leaves, is soften those edges. So I'm going to stop for just a sec. I'm going to let this dry and I'm going to go get some clean water. I'll be right back. Okay, I have some clean water now. All right, let's see, where are we? Okay, let's head back down. Let me flip my image back around. Okay. See how it looks. Yeah, I'm very happy. This is gonna look really pretty as soon as all that dries and we start softening those edges. Just give me a sec here. All right. Make sure we're all centered. Okay. I'm just going to grab some red. I'm going to quickly try to get that area back here finished. Just kind of putting in some of those lines. Ooh, and there's lots of yellow in here, isn't there? Okay. Let's just want to get some darker saturation in those areas. Kind of lost myself a little bit in this area. I wasn't very careful again. Making sure you get a nice line drawing. These leaves are really beautiful. The way they're kind of reddish and oh, same under here. Oh, hi, Julie. Yes, just thought about getting water. I keep 2 buckets next to my desk. I actually do. I have one that I've kind of been using for rinsing, but sometimes just getting up helps me so that I don't get stiff where I'm sitting, and it helps me just get a different, helps kind of take my eyes away. Okay, I have way too much water in that area. Okay, let me get that a little bit thicker. There we go. Now some of that yellow. And here's that area yesterday that I just whooshed right over with the water. Wasn't paying attention. Let's get some of that yellow in there. But really, you don't really see it. That actually kind of worked to my benefit now that I'm looking at it. I like it. I'm okay with that. You know what? This is so close in color to this one that I'm going to go ahead and darker color. I need some darker color right there. And then what I'll do on that leaf, so that I'm saving some time here, is I'll just define that edge. I'll fix that in a minute. Just kind of looking around, seeing where I have to get those darker values in. I'm going to kind of blend all this together. I gave that little area a few seconds to sink in, but you can still see most of my lines. There we go. Now I'm going to go back over into this area and with a dry brush kind of define those shapes a little bit with some of that magenta. See how now that I'm adding very, very dark magenta, that's really, really developing that gorgeous, beautiful, deep reddish orange. I'm always amazed that a color that looks so cool as that magenta can warm up once you add that yellow to it. It's just stunning. It's just the transparency just absolutely glows. Just kind of lifting some color out right in that corner. And then I'm going to paint right up alongside of that line. There we go. And I'm going to take just a little bit of that blue. And obviously it's mixing with some of that red. You can probably see that on my palette. That's okay because it's three colors, so I already have the red in there. So that just kind of helps it along. And then right along there. Just beautiful. And that is how you're really seeing that value change now. So even though that looked really dark in the beginning, all it needed was me adding a little bit more of that red. And now those colors around it look a lot lighter. So now I just have to work on this one and adding in the rest of those greens, and we're going to be really close to finishing this up. Debbie, when your brush goes off screen, I hear you clinking it into the glass. Are you washing off paint and are you dabbing it on a towel before you pick it up again? Yes, I do. Sometimes I dab. Sometimes I'm getting water and adding it to the plate. Sometimes your paint starts drying out. So I usually, when I dip my brush in my water, I don't swirl it around. I'm just picking up a little bit water to help thin out or help to allow the color to flow a little bit better. I know, I wish I could get it all on the screen, but you know, it's very limited real estate. So I can't get all of it on it. I sure wish I could. Did you see how much yellow I scooped up there? And just now I did rinse my brush a little bit, but I just kind of dipped it in there. I didn't really get off all the paint. A lot of times I'll get a question on why do I use such small brushes? Why not just use a bigger brush? Well, I could. One of the reasons why I don't is because I like nice sharp edges. I want to have control over where my colors are going. And I don't have that as much as I would like with those bigger brushes. I feel like I get too much water. I just don't have good control over where that color is going. What did I pick up? Oh dear. Picked up a chunk of paint. Pull some of that out. That's actually pretty yellow there. Again, at this point, I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on. Whatever's next door, I guess would be a good way to put it, is are there darks? Are there lighter values? Are there areas that are more saturated, with full color? Are there areas that you've made the color a little bit duller? All kinds of plays into it. So you have to kind of stop and evaluate things as you're painting. I'm just trying to get these last little areas in with the reds. And then we'll go and start putting in those greens. And then Debbie's saying, thank you. Understand only so much space. Thanks for the explanation. Yeah, there really is. I mean, I am, my camera is set up, or my older iPhone, my iPhone 8, is set up with a 16:9 format, which is pretty standard. But, you know, when you're, I guess another word for it would be the picture plane, there's only so much you can get in there. You either have to see me paint or, you know, see my palette. I didn't used to do this, but I like it that you can see what I'm doing. And as long as I paint in this 9x12 format and I don't get any bigger, you know, I still can fit in the painting on this part of the screen and manage to get that image so that you can kind of refer to it, and then my color. Because it is kind of important that you see how I'm mixing the color. But, yep, there's kind of a limit. Okay, so I think, I have a few more areas of red, but I think this is really starting to come together. Wait till we finish. And what time is it? Oh, good, we're at 10:47. So we're okay, I think, here. I know I'm not commenting as much on what I'm doing. It's just taking a little bit more concentration on some of these areas. Okay, and a little bit more pink there. And again, when those greens come in, it's going to make a huge difference. These areas aren't perfect, and I'm okay with that. I think you guys hopefully get the point of what I'm doing here. And it's not perfect, but it's gonna, once I get that green in there, it's gonna look really good. So now I'm gonna kind of put in that red from that leaf right there. And then those rest of those areas now are gonna end up green. Nope. See, that was, so what had happened was I actually had, sometimes if I dip my brush in too far, this has probably happened to you, the water droplet will just rush off the ferrule right into the color. But, you know, I usually just lift it off. And then I see a little area down here. It's kind of yellow. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how that is looking. We've got to get in the greens. Let's let that dry. Let's quickly, now I'm going to go over here and I am going to make a soft blend, so it's almost like a peachy color. And I'm holding this kind of at an angle. It's on dry paper, and just kind of a little bit more red, and then more red. I'm going to take a brush. Just kind of go over the top of where I made those lines so it just softens them out a little bit. Maybe a couple of more. There we go. That's just giving it a little bit of definition. And again, I'll soften it with my scrubber brushes. See how every time I add a little bit more paint, it's just building up another layer. And then the layer before it just looks a little bit lighter. And that's how you start building value. Okay. That's really pretty. I think it's looking good. So now you can see I've got some cool areas right over there. I've got some warm areas with the yellow. And I feel like it's really has a good out of focus look. I'm gonna keep this direction and just dry. Just deepening a little bit of that color. Oh, try not to get my arm in the paint. That little dark spot. Just deepening some of these values. And here's what happens when I'm not paying attention. I did get a couple of spots there, but I'll clean those up. And again, I'll come back and we'll soften those up. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that alone, and I'm gonna dry it and then finish up those greens. Oh, Pat, okay, now that you are really using those pinks, is there a reason you choose to use Quin Magenta rather than Quin Rose? Oh no, don't apologize. It really helps when people ask questions because I obviously can't think of every little thing to mention. Yes, I could have used Quinacridone Rose. I didn't use Quinacridone Rose because, to me, the most important areas in here are that stunning magenta. I can take magenta and make a very good rose color, but I would have an extremely hard time taking that Quinacridone Rose and making that beautiful magenta color. It just wouldn't happen. So I had to make a decision. If I use the magenta, I'm going to get those very bright, vibrant pinks, and then I can tone it down to a warmer color by using the Nickle AZO yellow. So it was just, you know, to somebody else. You could obviously use the Quinacridone Rose, but because it's a warm color, you're never going to be able to cool it down and get those beautiful, beautiful magenta colors. So good question. Thanks for asking. Okay. Hopefully that gives everybody a chance to kind of catch up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start on those greens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of clean my palette a little bit here. So I can make a nice clear green. And here's what I'm going to do. I want a nice clear green, even though those greens around there, they're dull. So why do I want a nice clear green? Well, because I am going to tickle the edge of that red and let all those edges start blending together so that it looks a little bit more out of focus. Now I'm going to try to keep some areas a little bit more yellow, some areas a little bit more green. And again, that's a little bit more vibrant than those greens are in that area. But again, I have nice thick paint, so I'll be able to grab it and pull it out and let it slowly blend into those areas. At least that's the plan. Okay. Okay, see how I'm tickling that edge? See how it helped blend that red? Same in these areas. I'm just going to keep doing that. Just going right into that color. I missed a tiny little branch there, but I'll add that in later. And that was a little too much water. See, I'm to the inside of those reddish areas and just kind of getting it all to blend together. Actually, I see a little bit of more red right in there. That's okay. Just gonna let all that blend out together. See those little areas I had left there? So now I'm just letting that color blend together. Hopefully you can see that. So that's what I want. Add a little bit more color right in that area. I'm trying to vary it again. Oh, went right over that. I don't really like that yellow there. I'm just gonna take it out. I'm just gonna turn that into the branch. It just kind of looked weird the way it kind of crossed over. See, I'm to the inside of that branch right there, and now this one, and now that leaf edge, and now it's kind of, I don't know how else to say this, but made it kind of have a fuzzy edge, which is what you want. I'm just lifting up some of that color. Go along this edge too. And then just kind of blend it out. Then we'll dry it and we'll add a little variation in those greens again. Yeah, because we want to come in here now and define some of the leaves and some of those redder areas. Might have to add a little bit more red. Okay, that's looking a lot better, but I still need to get some areas a little bit darker. And again, I'm going to wait. I'm going to let that dry. And in the meantime, let's flip it over. No, I don't need to flip it over. Both my waters are dirty, so let me get some clean water and we are going to start picking out some highlights and softening the edges around those top flowers. Petals. All right, got some fresh water. Before I start up there, let's just take a quick look at it. Let me pull that down a little bit. Oh, you can really see now what we've got going on. We've got plenty of dark values and those help make highlights look really bright. We've got some nice warm areas. We have some cool areas. So you've got warm and cool. You have dark values, and we're going to have light values in here. We have lots of bright saturated color, and we have some dull color going on. So all those things now are going to come into play when we start doing that main flower there. So I'm going to give this just a sec, give my hand a little rest, and let's see if another question. How many petals are there? I can't tell where one ends and one begins. Okay, that's an actual very good question. Here's what I do when I start tracing out with my projector. I never really think in terms of what is it that I am tracing out. Is that a line? Is that an edge? I just get the contour lines in, and I pay more attention to where color is. I think, I'm not quite sure how to say this without sounding kind of a little weird about it, but once I start getting into the zone, I don't pay attention to what I'm painting. I pay more attention to what color is where, what value is where. So here's a good example. Let's take this area right here. Well, that is a leaf, but I honestly don't really pay attention to where one leaf begins and where one ends. For instance, this part right here is actually that petal, or I'm sorry, I should have been saying petals, is folding over. It doesn't matter if that's one petal. What's important is that this area is going to be dark, this area is going to be light. There's lots of warmth here, there's some coolness there, there's definitely a dividing line, and then we're going to go over here and we're going to put some dark values in there. It's a little bit cooler, and over here is definitely much warmer. So that's kind of what I look at when I'm painting. That may not work for you, but that's kind of how I do it. Okay, so again, let's no, I said I don't need to flip this over. I just needed some clean water. Okay, I am going to pull my brushes over here, and I'm going to start out with my big scrubber. Actually, let me get a clean paper towel. Oh, let me make sure, is everything on screen? Okay, there we go. All right, I'm getting my big scrubber brush. I'm going to come over into this area, and now I'm not doing the circles in the background. Had a little bit of color on it from the background. Lots of water. Gentle scrubbing motion. If you're picking up and tearing your paper, it's because you may be using something other than Arches, or you may have 140 pound, which doesn't take to scrubbing well. That was really bugging me. There's a spot there. I didn't put some paper towels over there. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to go with my number 6, and you can see how it holds on to a little bit of the paper surface. You are lifting some, but not a lot. Not that obviously, if you look at my my paintings, it's obvious I don't have any problems with it. I'm getting this oil brush because as I'm looking at that area, there's like a little line of white, and so this is doing two things. It's helping me remove that line, just very lightly, getting rid of that pencil mark, and I'm creating that edge of white there. I'm very gentle. even though it probably doesn't sound like it. And you are seeing some paper, but I'm very gentle. And look at that. Now you can see how I brought back that highlight. Didn't have to worry about saving it. And that looks beautiful. And now I just need to get a little bit more down along this edge. You know, a lot of painting, honestly, is observation. You'd be surprised how often I'll be, and as a passenger, driving around, and I like to check things out. I like to look at shadows, and sometimes it's so important to just kind of observe nature, buildings, look at stuff and realize, you know, shadows aren't black. Okay, so if you see what I'm doing in this area, I'm really softening it up. I'm softening that edge, that green. Now I'm really going to come in here, because that's where that yellow background leaf is, and I really liked it. So I want to get that yellow back in there. So I'm going to try to get all that green out, and at the same time I'm softening the edge. Some of it's not wanting to come up. It's okay. I'm just still scrubbing. And I'm going to go back to my number 6. And I'm just softening up this area. I'm going to try not to get too close to the edge of that flower petal right there. And really, I don't want to sound flip about this, but this is how I get, if you've, again, just kind of really observe my paintings, this is how I get all those gorgeous, beautiful, soft blends in my background, and how I get those background flowers and petals to really drop in the background. Okay, again, I'm going to use the scrubber brush that I cut up. I'm going to stay to this side, and I'm going to soften that edge. And instead of in a straight line, I'm just kind of blending and I'm just going to pick it up. I'm picking up that water. With my brush, and get it a little bit softer. Bigger brush. There, I've completely softened that edge. Hopefully you can see that. Yes, you can. Okay, so I'm looking at what I'm filming, and you can definitely see how it's that nice soft edge. Okay, let's continue around. We've already softened right along here, but I'm going to go just a little bit again. Clean up my splatter marks. So you can see I am definitely picking up some paper, but I'm just not worried about it. It's not affecting the surface really. It's still blending out nicely. Let me just go back to a smaller one this time. Yeah, I'm going to need to, there we go. See how my lines just disappear, those pencil lines. But now, all with the scrubber brush, I'm creating those really pretty white ridges. I'm going to go back to, there we go. That was my oil. I'm using my oil one. And let's see this one. Isn't that cool? I love that. So what I'm doing is not only am I helping to create those lines, but I'm helping to create that edge of that shadow that's roaming around there. I mean, can you honestly imagine how long it would take to try to paint around all that and get those highlights? Now, if anybody is wondering, I'm not looking at the comments, if you're wondering where to get these Dick Blick scrubber brushes other than the one I made out of an oil brush, I have a link, and it is on that Thinkific platform where I've got all the downloads. And as soon as you download it, it should link right to the Scholastic Scrubbers. Okay, and I'm going to go back to this. This one, I want a softer line right in there. Okay, so honestly, the difference between what I had there and how I've pulled out those highlights and how I've made them just nice and soft, it's to me, it makes all the difference. Okay. Oh, and then right there, you can see we're right against that dark. I need to have a nice light area. Now it's bringing that forward a little bit, but still in the background. I'm just softly picking some of that color up. And right in here. I'll go back to softer brush. If you're having a hard time and you are scrubbing and you need that color to come up, let it soak for just a second or two, and then it will soften the color up. There, I brought that back, so that looks a lot better. And now let's soften this edge up right here. And I'm just going to go along. What a difference that makes. Much better. Now there's no real defined edge, so I'm actually going to turn it. See how my background is still staying nice and... My background is still staying nice and soft, but I'm blending the edges of these petals out just a little bit, so there's not so much distinction. Just with a very light touch. Let's see, and then... And then I can come back in later because there's a beautiful yellow edge right along that petal. And remember, I was talking about halation. It's kind of an orangish yellow. So we're going to add that in. And let's turn it and look. Make sure I've got it on the screen. Oh, it's already much better. Okay, now I'm going to use my bigger brush and start softening some of these areas because it's out of focus. Or at least it should be, but it doesn't look like it right at this moment. There we go. Go back to a smaller one. Much better. So we can post these just like the teacup if you're needing help, and I can walk you through some things as I look at your painting. One of the biggest problems I see is people do not have enough value. Even if something is like this and it's very soft and there's not a lot of dark darks, you still need value changes. And if you don't have that, then your painting is going to look flat. And you don't want that. Now I'm going to go with that heavy scrubber brush again, or my really stiff one. Get off that dark line. And that's kind of a tight spot, and I want that to be really bright white. Excuse me. I honestly look at my scrubber brushes the same way I look at my regular brushes. It is absolutely part of the painting. It's just as important. See, I brought that all the way back to white. Now, going to take some of that magenta. Just deepen some of this color. Now I'm taking some of that, yellow. No, it's too much red. Okay, let's get all these crumbs off. Now you can really see how once I added that yellow there, it kind of gave that edge a beautiful glow. But I really want to let it dry some, and then I'll go back to it. So now, felt like we needed a little bit more yellow in that area to kind of brighten that up. But it still needs to be softened. Oops, not with that one. Let's oh, my head didn't get in the way there. Okay. I'll have to define that more later, but I want to definitely to try to get to that flower. So let's quickly see what some questions are. Oh, Carol, I'm getting started late, so I'll watch from the beginning. Yeah, you really should. it's fun. It's definitely, I've been enjoying this. Okay, I'm just going to leave that alone right there. Doesn't look exactly the way I want it to look, but that's okay. Let's go over there. I'm going to flip that around. I think that's going to be easier for me to get that nice edge. Actually, I'm going to go with the bigger scrubber brush. Back to a little one. Of course, that's the area I had trouble with. And let me flip this image around. Again, there we go. I'm just going to pick some highlights, kind of blend all that together. It's a little darker. The color, obviously you can see that the color's unsaturated because I was not paying attention and I painted right over that area and some of that green bled through. So what is that green doing? It's obviously, because it's a combination of all three of those colors I'm painting with, kind of brought the saturation down, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. Obviously, you're not going to be perfect when you paint, and I definitely have areas that I'm not happy with. Not so much in this one, but just in general when I'm painting. That's okay. So again, I lost some of that beautiful bright magenta that would have been in that area, and that's okay. Now I'm gonna use my heavier or my oil scrubber brush. And I should mention, I'm not the first person to come up with this. I just use it pretty extensively. There are a lot of artists that use sandpaper. What are those white little pads called? The magic erasers. Some artists use that. So there's lots of different ways to get the color out and soften things. This isn't the only way. Let's soften this and blend it. Beautiful little spot of highlight up on that petal. Okay, let's flip it back over. I want to quickly, let's turn the image. All right, I think pulling out those highlights really helped. And I'm pretty happy with that. What I might do, there we go. Just flooded it with a little bit more color just to get a better value change there. Okay. Pretty happy with that. I think this is all looking really good. Let's get a little bit of some of the darker leaf edges in that area. All right, here I go. Actually, I'm gonna have to grab some red too. Back to the red. So it looks like some of these leaves have got edges of that kind of magenta. So I'll try to grab a little bit and just saw a spot down there I needed to fix. Let's blend this little leaf out. That helped a little bit. And we're going to be doing the same in here. See how I'm kind of bringing some of that value just kind of pulling it so it doesn't look, I don't want that to look flat. And oh, especially right along here. With a softer scrubber, soften that edge. Let's there. Now you can really see how that really helped that area. So I'm just going around and trying to pick out some highlights again, Same things up there so that we have a little bit of variation. Keep those nice dark areas, but just carefully softening some edges and pulling out some highlights right there on that little bit of pencil mark. That looks much better. See how that was so solid that it just looked like it was just pasted onto the paper. Same in these little leaf areas. Just kind of started looking a little flat. Let's see what some comments are. Shannon, I'm so thankful this is recorded and stays here. I'm so far behind, which is totally normal for me, but I learned so much more by watching and the doing. I really love this. Yeah, you know what's funny is I keep glancing up at the time and going, oh gosh, I'm behind. And it's always this, do I show them more in this area? Do I go ahead and move on to something else? So yeah, that's why I think live streams are just really neat, because you can go back and rewatch. You know, honestly, even if I was painting along with somebody, I would definitely have a hard time keeping up. Because you don't know what they're going to do. Obviously, you can see that as I've gotten more comfortable painting, I've been skipping around a little bit so that I don't have to spend so much time drawing. Okay, let's get away from that for a bit, and I'll readjust, because obviously I'm going to have to stream again. So let's see, let's move this around where we can see it. So I'm just going to kind of leave the rest of that alone, and I want to get started on that petal right there. Okay, going to clean off an area. I don't want anything to unsaturate that color I'm going to put in right there. In fact, an easy way to do this, let me backtrack a little bit. Instead of starting there, I'm going to start everywhere, and I'm going to start adding in the yellow. That way, by the time we get these finished, we've already got one layer down. So I'm going to kind of turn that yellow towards me. I'm going to make sure I have a really, really clean brush. Actually, let me go get some clean water again. Be right back. Okay, I have some clean water now. I am going to go with a very big brush, some relatively clean paper towels. Making a very watery mixture. Very light, so this has lots of water in it. Now I'm going to rinse my brush off. So I have mostly water in my brush. I have a little tiny bit of yellow. Now I'm rinsing my brush completely. I want to stay away from this area right in here, which is warmer. And I want to stay away from that center. Well, I don't want to stay away from the center. I want to stay away from the area that's really white. Now, yellow's really light, so you notice I'm not really being too careful with getting that water on, letting it sink in. So it's just my yellow. It's going to dry so light that you're barely going to see it, but it's helping to develop a base. So when we were going over the water before, what it was really the most important on is when you're doing backgrounds and you're doing these, you're trying to get these colors to blend out. That's when it's really important. Okay, so I have my big brush. I'm going to set that aside, and now I'm going to go ahead and go with my number 4. Very watery mixture. And I'm going to pick those areas where, like right here, there's a brilliant, gorgeous orange color that's going on right about here. A few places in the shadows. Over here. Right down in here, boy, is there a lot of, that's going to be this rich, gorgeous orange color. And right in there. And there's a little bit right along on that edge. Okay, now I'm going to let this dry. I don't want to put any more. I just kind of wanted to get get something going before we have to quit. And why am I letting that dry? Let's read some question. Lejeune, you're Deborah, if I'm correct. I've been looking at your paintings on your website. How long on average do you usually spend on your paintings? Over the courses of how many days? Well, right now, for example, that cherries and limes, I've been on that 2 months, but I've been so busy teaching that I haven't had a whole lot of time to paint, but I have been making the effort in the evenings to paint more on it. So I have really gotten a lot done, but I would say on a big painting with a lot of detail, about 40 hours, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. So yeah, it takes a long time. I would be fussing and fussing and fussing with these areas right here. I would be subtly getting in lines, but I love realism. So I love putting in every little detail. And again, especially down in here, oh my goodness, I would have I would have spent a lot more time. But you know, we don't have 5 or 6 hours. And I guess we do. One thing that I think is what I could really do is I've found a couple with some beautiful backgrounds that I really love. I feel like masking off the foreground image, and I'm not going to be painting the foreground image, but just painting a background, even if it takes me 8 hours and I stream or divide that up into, you know, 3 or 4 days, but just let you see how much detail, how much I really actually put into a background. So I'm most likely going to do that too. And so Shannon, like our conversation last night, we were trying to follow you paint your vision, which is invaluable. Later I can translate those skills into mine. You describe the skills so well, they are universal. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Meaning that we can then use the skills you are teaching on anything, not just this painting, which for me is priceless. Absolutely, that's what it is. Everything that I'm teaching here about water and the painting with those 3 colors, all the rest of that comes later. You know, that deciding what you want to paint is great, but you first need to build the skills to get to that point. And the 3 color palette, painting on the best paper you've got, all of that is just so important. So that's really what I'm trying to teach you how to paint. I'm not really teaching you how to paint this flower. I'm trying to teach you the skills to build value, the workhorse of the painting, saturated or unsaturated color and saturated colors when we get to that area, how to blend out a background, and how to make, you know, things really come forward. So those are really the skills that we're building, and those can be used with anything. So yeah, so now I just need to let that dry, and then we'll go on from here. Where do you get your source photos from, Deborah? I have a couple of photographer friends, and actually, oh my gosh, Marjorie, oh my gosh, let me think of the name. I got this one from her. She's on a reference photo website. I have a couple of other artists, but the majority of the time, I will take my pictures. Like, I'll go to nurseries, and we have a couple of really nice ones around here, and I'll get images from there. And then usually I never find what I want from just a photograph. So I'll actually take backgrounds that I like and put them, you know, that will be my first layer, and then I'll cut out a flower, and I'll just kind of arrange things how I like them. So I don't always, very rarely do I use an image exactly from the source. Like this one from Marjorie, her flower was much smaller and there was much more going on. So I took the background, cut out the flower, and then really enlarged this flower and brought it up so that we weren't seeing so much of the background. So yeah, that's kind of how I get my ideas. And there are, I don't know if any of you have heard of Pixabay, but Pixabay, it's free images, free reference photos to use and paint from, draw from. That's a great source to get images. There is iStock, Shutterstock. You can actually buy images from them, and they're relatively cheap. It could cost a couple bucks, but there are some really good photographers on there, and so you can do that. Join the Facebook reference photo groups. There are some excellent photographers on there that love to share their photos so that you can paint from them. So those are some ideas of where you can get some photos. So, okay, back to this. I'm really, really happy with how this is turning out. I think, I've got some work to do in there, building up some yellows. I lost some of the brightness there. I really wanted that to be a bright orangish reddish color. I feel like I lost a little bit in there. But all in all, I really feel like we've got a nice dulled down, unsaturated background, and the same for these little areas here. And even though that didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted it, I think it, I gotta fix this edge here. I think it turned out relatively good. And so now what I'm gonna do is, I need to restream this so that we can get that center finished. And I think what we've done so far was the hardest part, getting those blends in the background and doing these areas right here and trying to soften this. When we go to do these petals, it's going to go a lot quicker. At that point, we're really only looking at a couple of layers. There's a lot of white in there, so it's not going to be, there's not too many value changes in there. In fact, to show you that, let me pull up the black and white image, and here we go. So you can see we had quite a few dark areas right under, on the right side of that blossom. There was some really dark areas, and you can see how dark and unsaturated, dulled down those areas of those back petals and leaves were. And so by the time we get over to the flower area, we're not going to really have to do a whole lot of areas. So this is going to go pretty quickly. I think we'll be able to do it in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then just we'll be able to clean up some of the edges and get that glow around there. So far, so good. I think we're okay. We're on schedule. I figured we may have to do another stream, but that's okay. Bunny, I gotta go to my classes. Thank you so much for today, Debbie. I learned a lot again today. I will watch the recording after my classes. Enjoy the rest of your day. You enjoy the rest of your day too. I know it's pretty hard to schedule in a whole 3 hours each time, but luckily it's, you know, the stream goes up and goes up relatively quickly. And what I'm gonna do when I get a chance, it's probably not going to be until either later today or Monday, I am going to cut out some of the first part. You'll still be able to watch it. It will just take a while for that to go into effect. So I will definitely try to get out some of the parts of this tutorial that are just sitting and waiting for it to start. So I definitely think I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I'm going to let it completely dry. And I will post right away on Facebook. And please make sure, in fact, I'm gonna go ahead and go to face front. Here we go. Okay. I really, let me open this window a little bit, get some light in now. There we go. Okay. So I would really, if you have not gone to my Thinkific website, and the link is in the description here, make sure you do that so that you can get all the downloads, other things to really help you, especially if you were just watching and you are going to wait to rewatch it. That way you get things like the colors, the photo, the drawings, all my downloads, giving you all the links. So go over there, sign up for that. And then what I'm going to do is I will make sure I post all this on Facebook. And I am going to make sure an email gets sent out. And I'm thinking I want to do this on this coming Friday. That will make sure everybody has a chance to get caught up or just watch it again and then maybe start everything over to start painting. So, let's see, Shanna, have you posted the desaturated image to the Thinkific site? I think you're talking about the black and white one. Yeah, I will go ahead and do that. Did I? I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. If not, I'll post that. And Deborah says, thank you again. And thanks to Shannon. Yeah. And thanks for today, Amalia. You're very welcome. Again, the main flower part is going to go pretty quickly. If you were looking at that black and white image, and I will make sure it's on there, you're going to really see that there's not a lot of value change in there, but a lot of light. So that's what's really going to make it stand out from that darker area on the bottom and that light around the edges. So, Teresa, thank you, Debbie, for another great day. I love all the little tips and tricks you give us while you work. You're very welcome. I'm getting better at it. When I first started filming tech tutorials, I was just terrible. It takes a long time to learn how to teach online. 2 years ago, I thought, oh, this will be easy. Just set up my camera, put my image down. Oh, no. It wasn't like that at all. So I am getting much better at developing the skills to talk, paint, and think about what I need to tell you. And hard to believe that has to be a skill, but it really is. So bear with me. I'm getting better. I'm forgetting less things while I'm talking, and I'm relaxing a lot more as I paint. And I think that's important, and hopefully you sense that, and trying to have a little bit more fun and not be so serious about it. Like when I was first teaching, it was really hard. I felt like I couldn't laugh or really talk, and I think I was just way too serious. So again, I think I want to do this on a Friday, and again, I'm going to put it on Facebook. I'm going to put it on email. I'm going to make sure, just not as a Facebook event again. No way. Not going to do that. I don't want people mad at me, especially over a free tutorial. There were quite a few people that got mad. I was like, well, this is free. Please don't get mad at me. I'm still trying to learn all this too. So hopefully a whole week will give everybody a chance to catch up. And so I am going to go take a photograph of this so that you can really see it in the good color. And I'm going to put it on Facebook as a post so that we can talk about it. And then you can post your picture. I'm not even going to bother with doing it under my Thinkific site because it's I don't know. I don't like that that program that they have on there. It seems like it's really awkward to use. Let's see, Shannon, thank you so much for your knowledge. Such a wonderful class. Yeah, thank you so much. Excellent. PJ, learned so much. You're very welcome. And again, I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to get this on Facebook. I'm going to take a picture of it, get it on Facebook so you can really see it up close and see the true colors. And then I will make sure that everybody knows what time Friday I think I'm going to go ahead and do this. So probably in the morning again. And yeah, so I think this was, I don't know, I had a great time. Hope everybody that did, if you felt really stressed, don't. Just stop what you're doing, watch it again, and you'll get it. And I have a couple of more really beautiful images that I want to do for live streams, and I'm just excited. I'm excited to get this done. So yeah, can't wait. Let's see, any more questions? Let's see. Teresa, yes, I can't believe this is free. You are so generous with sharing your knowledge and skill. Thank you, Shannon, for your help as well. Right? She's just, my gosh. She has been a tremendous help. I will say this, though. I want to keep doing these live streams, and I now have to figure out how I'm going to be doing this. I think I want to do one free a month, but I want to start doing some that are paid, like maybe start out everybody at like $10 and then like have it go through Vimeo, which means no commercials when you rewatch. We can take our time. So that's I'm kind of really want to get to that point. I still want to do free ones, but I want to do some paid ones and again, go through Vimeo so that it's all private. You know, there could be, just a few of us, and start them out at maybe 10 till I get better at teaching these things, and then maybe go up a little bit. And I may even jump up with Thinkific to the next level where I can offer subscriptions for like maybe, I don't know, something like $15 a month, and offer, anybody who does that, then the streams are included once a month. So uh, I'm gonna figure this out. And let's see. Shannon, have you ever used liquid watercolor, and what's your thoughts on them? No, I have not, because most liquid watercolors are fugitive. They are made with dyes, and dyes will not last. They will completely bleach out. They're beautiful, gorgeous. You know, you have those beautiful fluorescent colors, but they won't last. And you're probably thinking about the PH Martins. Yeah, they're great for commercial artists, and I used to be a commercial artist. They're wonderful for being able to get an image that's going to be used in an ad, and then you take a photograph of it, but they absolutely don't last. And really, tube watercolors are liquid watercolors. It's just how much you can thin them out. So, Shannon, oh, you're so sweet. Thanks, everybody. I feel a lot better today. Boy, yesterday, my husband and I went out for a little bit, and I was just beating myself up all day, thinking people were angry at me because that Facebook thing was just such a disaster. And oh my gosh, I felt like I took 10 steps backwards. So, I take things like that seriously. I don't want anybody thinking I'm a flake. I put so much effort into filming these and getting the right equipment that boy, my goodness, it's how much you have to go through to do this. I can see why a lot of people don't teach. It's a skill. And Amalia, pretty reasonable money I'm in. Oh my gosh, thank you. I mean, you know, I don't care how anybody knows how old I am. I'm 55, and I would really love to, I make a little bit of money at this. Most of the money I've made has gone all back into all the equipment that I've had to purchase to even just get to this point that we've done. I had to have a second webcam to be so you can see my palette. I had to use my old iPhone to film, and so that I could get good color. I had to get programs. I got a whole new iMac desktop. You know, that was a few thousand. I've had to spend a lot of money getting these done, but I really want, I don't expect to make a lot of money. I just kind of want enough money so that I can enjoy life a little bit, and I don't want this to get massive and huge. Just want to have a little bit of money so that pay a few bills and be able to enjoy my garden and enjoy painting. So yeah, I have to figure all that out, and I like to take time to do that. And Shannon would love to do a group paid. I'd be interested. Yeah. And so the bad thing, I'm just going to mention the bad thing about YouTube. It's great when you're doing free things and you want to start using YouTube to make money with. I don't. I just wanted to do these free ones, and I'm going to keep doing them, but I just wanted to get used to how to live stream. Vimeo, which I think pretty much all of us know, it's great. I'm going to have to pay for that platform. It's going to cost me every month. But everything is private. You won't ever have to see commercials. It will always be available to you. I'll make it so that everybody can download them onto their computer, but I'm really, really leaning towards that. Keeping a couple of free ones on YouTube, maybe even doing free ones on Vimeo, and then sending them over to YouTube. So that's kind of what I am planning on doing. I just don't know quite yet how I'm going to do that. And then we can break them down. You know, we can do like 2 hours in the mornings or 2 hours in the evenings. I don't exactly quite know how I'm going to do this. I just know that I think is going to be the best way to go. And now we're not worrying about what YouTube is telling me I can and can't do. Or, you know, this way I can set up the whole class, have a pre-link that's already there, and I don't have to wait to start a stream, and then everybody's trying to find out how to get there. So that's a little bit, that's probably another month down the road, but I'm going to keep it reasonable to start, and hopefully everybody will be okay with chipping in a few dollars to watch a really in-depth tutorial, and starting from the very beginning, having a talk, a little chat, having my little color wheel recipe cards. And I really think you'll learn a lot. Hopefully you're learning a lot now, but I really want to delve into just some things that I really can't now, and I really want to make sure I take time on some of these things. Again, like how I was talking earlier about backgrounds, I just want to just do a background, and that way I can kind of relax a little bit. I don't have to think about all the other things that we need to get done. You can just watch very closely how I get every little subtle part of the background. So yes. Okay, so I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to shut the stream down. And again, don't forget, all the links are up in the description. And then here shortly, I will post this on Facebook so that everybody can look at it. And then I'll send out an email and all the other stuff, just so that we know we're continuing on with this. So take a big breath and say thank you to everybody for watching this. I feel so lucky that people want to watch me paint. I'm just always amazed at that. Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye and happy painting, and ask me questions all week long until we get to Friday. Okay, so bye-bye, everybody.